Above podcast. I'm your host, Will Lambley, and today we're so excited to be joined by longtime college basketball assistant. Now he works for the Arkansas basketball's radio broadcast and for the Razorback Foundation, Coach Matt Zimmerman. First off, Coach Z, thank you for being on with us today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Will. Always love to talk to you and visit with you, and you're a special young man, and it's always good to talk to you, always. And whether we're talking life or basketball or sports in general, it's always good.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's always great to talk to Coach Z. Before we got on, me and Coach Z were talking about how the first time I really started to figure out who Coach Z was back in, I guess, January of 2019, when I started listening to the Razorback basketball broadcasts, and I fell in love with Coach Z because no matter what was happening in the game, no matter if we were down by 10 or up by 20, he always believed the Hogs were going to win. Mm-hmm. And I've always been someone in sports that no matter what it looks like during the game, I'm always going to believe we're going to win.
Yeah, you got to have hope.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I know almost everyone around Arkansas athletics knows who you are, from being involved with basketball for so long and mm-hmm. now doing stuff with the Razorback Foundation and the radio broadcast. But man, how did that love for Arkansas sports start?
Well, for me, it started in little rural Arkansas, a place called St. Vincent, which is 10 miles north of Morrilton, right off the Arkansas River Valley as you're stretching into central Arkansas. And, like a lot of people with older brothers, and I had an older sister too, but my brothers, especially my brother Ken, he kept up with everything the Razorbacks. And at that time, when I was a little boy, that's the Razorback football team and Razorback basketball are both very, very good. And so, kids in this state, you grow up loving the Razorbacks. But when I wasn't even 10 years old, the Razorbacks finished third in the nation in football and finished third in the nation in basketball. And both those teams had a legit chance to win a national championship. So as an 9-year-old kid, getting to watch on TV teams almost win the national championship was pretty inspiring. And we weren't a family that we came to Fayetteville every weekend to watch games. We really couldn't afford that. That's just not how we operated. We had everything we needed, but we didn't have Razorback season tickets, and we weren't loading up the car and coming to all the games. When I would get to see the Razorbacks play, it would be because my brother-in-law, Jim Hartman, or my brother Ken, we'd go an hour down the road on I-40 to Little Rock, and we'd watch the Razorbacks play football in War Memorial Stadium, or we would watch the Razorbacks play basketball in Barton Coliseum. Even went to Pine Bluff to watch the Razorbacks play basketball in the Pine Bluff Convention Center. So that was exciting for me as a kid. I can even remember when they would do spring football and they'd play a red-white game in Little Rock. Yeah. And, when we'd see it in the paper, and my brother-in-law would say, "We're going. I'm going to take you to the red-white game in April. We're going to go." And, all through the end of basketball season, I'd have the football spring game to look forward to. And I saw some great football games at War Memorial Stadium: Arkansas versus Texas, Arkansas versus Texas A&M, Arkansas versus Ole Miss. Just so many great games and a lot of great wins growing up following the Razorbacks. And then Barton Coliseum. One of my favorite games was I think it was my junior year of high school, and I think me and my brother and my brother-in-law and maybe my sister went to Barton Coliseum, and it was Arkansas, coached by Eddie Sutton, playing Tulsa, who had a very good program at that time, coached by Nolan Richardson.
Oh, that's crazy.
And he was a coach at Tulsa, and it was a great packed out in Barton Coliseum. And it seemed like it was a Sunday afternoon. It may have been a Saturday, but I think it was a Sunday afternoon game, and it was a crazy, intense, close game. And at the end of the game, the late William Mills, who was a good player here, who'd gone to Tennessee and transferred to Arkansas, played for Eddie Sutton and ended up playing for Coach Richardson his first year. But William Mills was on that team, and they had a very good player, Steve Harris, at Tulsa. And he went to take the shot. I think the Hogs were up 1, and William Mills came behind him and blocked the shot. And instead of dribbling the ball out, he took off down the floor, and Tulsa couldn't catch him. And he did this incredible behind-the-head dunk.
Oh, wow.
I'll never forget how wild and crazy and loud it was in Barton Coliseum. It wasn't a three-point line at that time. So now the Hogs are up 3. It sealed the game. And I'll always remember William Mills, rest in peace to him now, but that game, and looking at Nolan Richardson on that sideline. He wore polka dots back then and cowboy boots. And I remember seeing this, seem like a larger-than-life guy barking and yelling up and down the sidelines. Well, I didn't realize that was November or December. I didn't realize it that the next March that Coach Sutton would leave the Razorbacks and go to Kentucky. And a couple weeks after that, Frank Broyles hires that coach from Tulsa to be the head coach of the Razorbacks, Nolan Richardson. So that's where my love of the Razorbacks grew, was in St. Vincent, Arkansas, and watching games on TV or getting to Little Rock to watch them.
That's awesome. And it's crazy you can talk about that dunk you remember, like as a kid, like growing up, going to games, watching, like grew your love. Like I can remember the same thing. Like I remember like exactly where I was, like when I was in the 5th grade, when Arkansas was playing Kentucky, watching like the Michael Qualls dunk, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go to a game there sometime.
Yeah. That's what it is when you see it on TV.
Exactly.
It seems like a larger-than-life place. It feels like a place that maybe I'll never see. And then when you come to school here, or you're coming to games at Bud Walton Arena, it's like, man, this is what I've seen all those times on television. And it is special. And this place is special. One thing I've never taken for granted at all here is being able to go to a game, to go. Now in my role as the color analyst on the Razorback Sports Network, and for the things I do, like the Razorback Daily, I don't take any of that for granted, getting to follow and go to these games and watch the Razorbacks play. There's a lot of people spend a lot of money, good hard-earned money to come, to buy tickets, to make donations. And I'm fortunate that I can go to the games and follow the team and be a part of it. And I was very, very appreciative when I was an assistant coach. There was times where I'd be in the Razorback locker room and we've got a big game, and it could even be a road game. And you're sitting there looking at all these young men that are wearing Razorback uniform, and you're looking at them and you're like, these young men they've got their uniform on, it says Razorbacks, and they're about to go out on this court and represent the entire state.
Yeah.
And we've got to be really good as coaches to help them represent this entire state to the best of their abilities, that they're prepared, that they're ready, that they're going to have success. And I felt a lot of pride representing the state and working for the Razorbacks, and I still do. It's a little different role now than coaching, but I still feel that way. And this is a very special place. What I love about Arkansas is the passion of our fans.
Yeah, it's second to none.
It's second to none. And that sometimes they're a little crazy, right? Yeah. But always they're passionate. Always they care. Always they want us to win. Always they want to support. And not all schools are that way. And not all schools have this kind of support. Yep. Even like with baseball. Yep. I coached at other universities. You might have 300, 400, 500, 600 people at a baseball game. You have a Razorback baseball game, there might be 10,000, 12,000 people there for a Razorback baseball game. It's incredible, the support for this athletic program, and Razorback fans, they're incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I know, being from Oklahoma, the University of Oklahoma has had some great football teams. Sure. They've also had some really good basketball and baseball teams, but you never hear of anyone in Oklahoma saying, hey, I'm going to go to a basketball or baseball game. No. All they care about is football. But Arkansas, man, baseball team's ranked number 1 right now. You better believe it's going to be sold out every weekend.
Every game's going to be packed.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. And it's, I've coached at the Lloyd Noble Center many times at OU. When I was assistant in Missouri, we were in a Big 12 with them. And, you could go in there sometimes if they were like they had Blake Griffin.
Yeah, those
place could be. They would be really, really good. And they'd have some good crowds. There's other times you go in there and it would be half empty or more than half empty. So it's very seldom you see that at Arkansas. Just there's so much passion in the people. They're always hopeful. They're always hoping that we can turn a season around, or maybe this is the year that baseball wins a national championship, or maybe this is the year that we go back to the Final Four in basketball. And Razorback fans always think that.
Yeah. Hey, I believe this is a year for baseball. I believe every 30 years, 64 we won one in football.
Absolutely.
94, then,
it's written, right?
Exactly.
64, 94, and 24.
Yes, sir.
And it seems fitting. And now to have this incredible baseball team that, I went to the Arkansas State game. It was cold, and there was still a pretty good crowd, and packed because it was a Tuesday night, but it was really cold. Still a good crowd. And just beat them bad, just tear them up.
Yeah.
It's like they never have a letdown. I can think of a lot of other really good Razorback baseball teams. You think, this is the year we're going to win it. But then we'll lose to UCA, or we'll lose to Little Rock, or we'll go on the road to Georgia and get swept, or something like that.
Yeah.
And this team has been like, no,
Yeah.
we're going to win. We're going to win the midweek. We're going to win the weekend. We're going to win whether it's on Thursday or Friday or Saturday. We're going to win. And I think it's impressive. And I think, like, you come off sweeping LSU.
Yeah.
That's a defending national champion. And to come and play as well as this team did, I thought, okay, well, here on Saturday, we've already won the series. LSU's a great program, right? They still got good players. LSU can get this game on Saturday. Nope. Razorback said, no, we're not giving it to you. We're not even going to give you one game. So I think this team has a real big killer instinct, and I think that'll pay off for them in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yep. I think the difference in this team and every other team is, like, a few years ago, like, they had a good team, but, like, they had one great pitcher. Now they have, like, 10 guys that guys I haven't even heard of. They throw them out there. It's like, what in the world? There's
guys that don't get to play much, and they'll get an inning, and they won't give up a hit, and they'll have 2 strikeouts, and they roll through innings. It's incredible, the talent and the depth on this team. And, and that's what Coach Richardson had on many of his teams at Arkansas on the basketball side, and that's what the 1994 team and the 1995 team had. They had 12, 13 really good, very talented, tough, hard-nosed, blue-collar players. And, that team was made up of a lot of sophomores at Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
Corliss and Scotty, your 2 best players, they're sophomores. They won the national championship with sophomores. And Corey Beck and Clint McDaniel and Dwight, they were all juniors. And so one of the most incredible runs to winning a national championship was that 94 team.
Yep. And as we talked about, like, the University of Arkansas and, like, just the passion of the fans and, like, how great some of the runs have been, like, and I know that you were able to be involved with the Arkansas basketball program with Nolan Richardson. Mm-hmm. How did that look like when you got to Arkansas, and, like, how did you get involved with the team?
Sounded easy, but it was very difficult to get involved back then. When I got here, my dream was to play basketball for the Razorbacks. But I was 5'8". I went to a small school, Class A basketball team. We'd made the state championship game and got beat, and we'd had some good teams at my school. I think we were 133 and 18, 8th through 12th grade.
Oh, wow.
So we were winning. And I thought, I can play at Arkansas. And I got here, and so back then you didn't do – the coaches couldn't coach the team year-round like you can now. And so back then, official basketball practice didn't start till October 15th. School started in August. So from August on, I would just go down to – I was in Gregson Lodge, which was a dorm on campus.
Okay, yeah.
And I would come down the hill from Gregson right to Barnhill Arena. And back in those days, Coach Richardson had practices open. He had workouts open. Bud Walton was – it's not like nowadays where every door of every building's locked. Back then – all the doors of Barnhill Arena, a lot of the doors were locked, but the business, all the ones that said business, meant you were coming in there to have business hours or work. They were all unlocked. All 4 sides of the arena had unlocked doors, Monday through Friday. And I would go in there and I'd go up to the coaches' offices and I'd bug Scotty Edgar, who had been an assistant at Tulsa under Coach Richardson, Mike Anderson, who'd played and been on Coach Richardson's staff, Wayne Stellick, Ronnie Cottrell, who was the second longest head coach in Division I at Houston Baptist University till just a few weeks ago. I would just bug those guys. Yeah. I'd go by their office and they knew I wanted to walk on. I'd let them know in August when I came up I want to be a walk-on. They're like, well, back then they didn't have full walk-on tryouts, so you had to kind of figure out a way to get there. I wasn't a recruited walk-on. And so the guys would do some weights and conditioning on their own. Coaches couldn't coach them until October 15th, but they would play pickup. And Nolan Richardson was a big pickup basketball guy. He expected those guys to play 5-6 days a week. And so sometimes the guys would play, and they always had 14, 15 guys, but if a guy was out that day or if a guy had something, back then you had classes on the hill, you had traditional college then. So maybe they'd be a little shorthanded, or maybe a guy was just tired of playing pickup every day and he only wanted to play 2 games that day instead of playing 7. I would just sit around there, and as soon as they needed a 10th, I could get in. And I would play, but I was smart enough, I could really shoot. But I learned pretty quick during those pickup basketball games with Keith Wilson and Allie Freeman and Tim Scott. When those guys really wanted to, they were the guards, Cannon Whitby, Ron Urey, another who's passed away, a great Razorback player. If they didn't want me to get the shot off, I wasn't going to get it off. I wasn't quick enough or athletic enough to do it. And I was smart enough to, this is very difficult. I'm not in there category of a basketball player, but I still want to be on the basketball team. And they just let me hang around. And a couple of days before October 15th was they'd always start midnight, the Friday closest to October 15th. So it might be October 14th or October 13th or whatever. And it was like Wednesday, and they were giving the players off on Thursday. And I'd gone in to shoot in Barnhill by myself, and I was just shooting and working out and had a sweat going. This was my dream, Barnhill Arena. To even be in there with a basketball and shooting was a dream come true. And I've got all these visions of me being on the Razorbacks. And I remember Scott Edgar and Mike Anderson walking along the side there where the coaches always, their locker room, the coaches' locker rooms were up the stands into one of the little tunnels. There's a hallway back there. And they would come out and go down the steps, and then they'd walk across by the court. And the training room and the coaches' locker room and the players' locker room was on this end. So they would walk right by the edge of the court always. And I'm on the other end just working out. One on none, going full speed. And they stop, and I feel like they're talking about me. And Coach Harris, hey, come down here. And I ran down there, and they said, hey, we'll start practice, Friday night. Man, I said, yeah. And I'm thinking, this is it.
Yeah. And
they said, we're not going to put you on the team this year. You're not, well, we'd like you to be a student manager. Well, I wanted to be a walk-on. There was other places I could have gone that had told me I could come and walk on or get a small scholarship at a couple of D3s and D2s, and so I came to Arkansas to be a Razorback. So I was very upset, not to them, but inside it really bothered me. And for 3 or 4 days, I really pouted around, and I said, I want to be a Razorback, so maybe I should transfer and try to go play college basketball somewhere else. And I went to Midnight Madness and watched it, and I watched a few days of practice. And back then, Nolan Richardson practiced at 6 a.m. and then at 3 p.m. And I'd go watch 6 a.m. practice. I'd walk down the hill. And after about 4 or 5 days, Wayne Stellick said, well, won't you just, if you're going to be here every day, watch practice, won't you just be a student manager? But I thought that was below me,
Yeah.
And so that's the best thing I did, that I became a student manager and worked for the Razorbacks. And I appreciate Coach Anderson, Coach Egger, Coach Stellick. And, Coach Richardson, obviously, he could have ran me off at any time, but he was really good to me. But that staff were giving me a chance to be around the team. And then I did it for the rest of my days in college.
That's awesome. And that's so cool about how you stuck around and found a role with the team.
Because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to play.
Yeah, exactly. That was probably hard.
Yeah.
But was it when you were a manager? We were talking a little bit about the story of the Arkansas-Texas game.
Yeah.
Was that when you were a manager that Arkansas played Texas, where Coach Richardson left the game and then you had to go get him?
It was 89-90 season. It was my senior year. And I'd gone through ROTC here. And in maybe January, I had found I wanted to stay and just work be a grad assistant or whatever I could do to stay with basketball. I didn't ever want to leave Razorback basketball. But ROTC had paid for a lot of my college. And so in about January of 1990, I'd found out I'd been selected for active duty. And so I was going to have to leave. And I owed them a minimum of 4 years active duty. So this was in February, and we had a great team. We were 3rd ranked, 4th ranked, 5th ranked most of the season, with Mayberry, Day, Miller, sophomores.
Yeah. 3 first-rounders.
3 first-rounders. And they're sophomores at that time. And we're at Texas. I think we're 3rd in the nation, and we're playing them. And it's a Sunday on ABC, and everybody is watching the game. Cheryl Miller, who's a great player at USC, was the color analyst, and we're doing the game. And we'd beaten Texas maybe 7 or 8 times in a row. Coach Richardson really did well against Texas. It's one reason. That's another reason our fans love him so much.
Yeah.
He just beat Texas most all the time. And we had a good stretch of beating them. And we're playing, and they had 3 great guards, and everyone called them BMW. It was Blanks, Mays, and Wright. The 3 guards for Texas, Travis Mays, Joey Wright, and they were really good. They were very, very talented. And we're in a dogfight. Willie Nelson was there. The governor of Texas, I believe, was there. There was all these people, because Austin, state capital, and there was all these political people there, and there was all these people at the game, and national television, and we're playing, and it looks like they're finally going to beat us. And they were a great free throw shooting team, and we were behind. Well, they get a breakaway, and I think it was Lance Blanks got the breakaway, and Lee Mayberry sprinted after him, one of the cleanest players you ever see. And he stripped the ball like you're supposed to, but fouled him not to give him a layup. In a dead sprint, they call an intentional foul, and bad call, but that's okay. Well, their guards, all three of them, Mays and Blanks and Wright, all three of those guards all shot, high 80s or 90s. So they make a free throw or two, it's ball game. And he misses, and then we have to throw back then there was all 1-and-1s if it was on the floor foul. But when Lee had fouled, Dave England, who was the basketball trainer here for over 30 years, Dave hit me on the leg and he said, "Go let coach in the locker room." And the locker room was to our right, which was it was our bench, half court line, Texas bench, and then the tunnel that both teams came out was down there. This is in the Superdome at the University of Texas, big arena. And I said, "What?" And I look up and I see Coach Richardson going towards that tunnel. He was right in front of the Texas bench. And the game was not over. But he was really mad. He thought he was going to get a tech. He thought he was going to get kicked out. He was really, really mad. And he had his coat hanging across his back. And he walked right in front of their bench. And I had the key to the locker room. Nowadays, you don't need a key to the locker room. There's so much security at these schools. They got some, each school has, Landmark or Allied, whatever company is their security company, sitting at all these places so they don't let people in and out. Back then, it was like you'd have at a high school. That was your locker room. Texas gave you the key. You had to control your own locker room. So I run to let him in. We go down, we go through the tunnel, and I remember the fans just hanging over the top of that tunnel screaming bad at Coach Richardson. He was the opponent, but it was bad. It was rough. It was cuss words. It was everything mixed in there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And he walks out. He's got his head down. You walk through the tunnel. You hit the wall, cinder block wall. You make a left, and you go down about 30, 40 steps, and our locker room's on the right. So I run ahead of him and unlock the door. He walks in. He throws his coat down. I pick his coat up and hang it up. And I said, "Coach, you need anything?" And he's got his head. He's patting his head, and he don't say anything. So I leave. I leave him in there. I go back out. They miss free throws, and then they had the ball. We foul again. They miss free throws. So there's a timeout. We're down 3, and there's a 3-point line. And there was a few coaches back then that were fouling up 3.
Okay, yeah.
But most people didn't. Most people weren't doing that quite yet. They would just try to guard you. And so I was thinking, I wonder if Texas is just going to foul us. There was only a few seconds left. And they throw it into Lee Mayberry, and they put 2 of those great guards on him. They're both right there with him. And he goes up the floor, and he goes between his legs, behind his back, and he shoots this long 3-pointer, and they're guarding him, but they're not like getting after him.
Yeah.
And he drills this 3-pointer, and it goes over. The place went dead quiet. And no one told me to go get coach, but I ran right across the court and ran back to the locker room, ran in, grabbed his coat. I said, "Coach, Lee just hit a shot from half court. We're going to overtime." It wasn't quite a half court shot. But at the time,
adrenaline.
But I remember, and I took the coat and handed him his coat. And he said, "What?" And I said, "We're in overtime." And he didn't pause. Me and him ran back out.
That's insane.
And if I was probably a little smarter, and now knowing how he got beat up a little bit, I might have just went back there and said, "Hey, Coach, Lee just hit a shot. We're going to overtime. I don't know if you just want to stay back here. I'll come give you some updates. Or I don't know what you want to do. I'm just letting you know." But I was so excited. I was like, "Let's go."
Yeah, that's insane.
And Coach went back out with me, and we beat him by like 9 in overtime. It was never close. Ernie Murray, Todd Day, Oliver Miller, Lindsey Howell, the late Lindsey Howell, Ron Uri. I mean, it was dunk time in overtime. I mean, we smacked them. And we ran out of that tunnel after the game was over. And Coach Tom Penders, who's still alive, was a good coach. I know he wasn't happy about the whole deal. They were mad that Coach came back out. They thought he should have got technical for leaving and coming back out. And I remember we were running out of that tunnel, and Coach, he didn't say a word to anybody, but he was looking up at that tunnel. He kind of, and when we hit that wall, and you make that left, our players were in a big old pile, just like you'd see when you go to the College World Series. You know, the dog piles?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And our players were just dog piled each other in that little hallway at the Superdome. And that was an incredible feeling. That's something that I've never forgot it. And that was 1990. That's a long time ago. I'll never forget that.
That's crazy. I know there's a lot of Arkansas fans that were around whenever that game was being played that will still never forget that game.
Right.
That's so cool.
The old timers. Yeah. It's the old timers that remember that one.
That's so cool that you had such a big part in that. Yeah. And Coach Richardson, coming back to the game. Yeah. And that's so cool. And
well, Will, you'll appreciate this. Being from Tulsa and knowing Lee Mayberry, one of the most modest people.
Oh yeah, awesome
in
guy.
History. And Lee and that was a Sunday afternoon game. We flew charters. Back then we flew 3 little small airplanes. So Coach Richardson and Coach Edgar, Coach Anderson, and 3 or 4 players would be on the school plane. They had 2 pilots. And the other 2 planes usually had 1 pilot. So one of the players or one of the staff or somebody often would sit in the co-pilot seat. And we had what was called the Hog Ball Air Force. Wayne Stellick ran it. So instead of us being on one beautiful, nice charter like we do now, back then we had 3 little small airplanes. Those planes are a little rougher, a little bit. The Razorbacks did that like a lot of schools did until the Oklahoma State plane crash.
Okay.
And when the Oklahoma State plane crash coming out of Boulder, Colorado, when they played the Colorado Buffaloes, when Eddie Sutton was the head coach, their 3rd plane, which was always your radio broadcast crew, your student managers, maybe a couple of your walk-ons, your media relations guy, maybe your athletic trainer, those guys were usually on the 3rd plane. And that's the plane that crashed at Oklahoma State, killed 10 of them. And when that happened, all schools like Arkansas said, we're taking too big a risk on these little small planes. So then we went to bigger planes. But I remember when we flew back from Austin and we landed, and a new restaurant, a fast food restaurant, had opened up right around that time. Brahms. It's still there. The one on Martin Luther King.
Okay, yeah, it's still
that
there,
Brahms had opened at that time. It was brand new. And Lee loved ice cream. Both of us did. And we go in there on Sunday night. It stayed open late, 10, 11 o'clock or whatever. And so we get back in town, and Lee said, let's go get a milkshake. So we go to Brahms, and we walk in there. And, Fayetteville people are used to seeing Razorbacks. They're used to seeing their coaches and their players. But Lee Mayberry walked in that Brahms, and everybody stood up and started clapping for Lee
That's
Mayberry.
amazing.
I always remember it, yeah. And but that was a great team. That was a Final Four team in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool that you were able to be a part of that and be able to be a part of like some of the greatest moments in Arkansas basketball history.
Yeah.
And after your time at Arkansas, I know you went into high school coaching a little bit. What would that look like with high school coaching, then getting into college coaching with Coach Anderson?
Yeah, it was a different journey for me than most because when I first got out, I had to go active duty. So I had ended up being 5 years active duty.
What branch was that?
I was in the United States Army.
Okay, that's
I was
awesome.
an ordnance officer. I went to Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. I was still 21, just graduated college, and I had to go to Aberdeen. I was scared to death. And went to I should have been there a year, but Desert Shield, which later became Desert Storm, which was the war, was already starting as I went active duty. So as soon as we got there, they said, you guys won't be here a year. You're going to be here about 9 months. We're speeding everything up because you're going to probably have to go to combat. And I was like, I want to go back to Barnhill Arena and be back with the Razorbacks.
Yeah,
I don't want to go to combat. I don't want to go to Kuwait. I don't want to go to Saudi Arabia. I don't want to go to Iran. I don't want to go to Iraq. I want to go to Barnhill Arena. But spent 9 months in Aberdeen, Maryland. And during that 9 months, Desert Shield became Desert Storm, but it was only a 4-day war. We wore them out in 4 days. Our troops got all the way to Baghdad, and the war ended. And so then I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, learned how to jump out of airplanes, went to airborne school, got to hang out there a little extra because my unit, which was in the 1st Infantry Division, Fort Riley, Kansas, they were still in the Middle East getting ready to deploy back from the war, from Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So I just hung out at Fort Benning a little extra for a little longer, and we did training, and I learned a lot about being an officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then as my unit was coming back to Fort Riley, Kansas, the 1st Infantry Division, I went there, and I ended up being there for over 4.5 years. Had 5 years active duty, and got to see a lot. Went to Germany, went to a lot of different military posts. Fort Irwin, California, the National Training Center. I spent a lot of time there, and so it was a really good 5 years for me in the Army. I grew up a lot. I learned a lot, and got out of that and came back to the Arkansas River Valley to coach high school. And I took a job at a little small school called Plainview. It was actually Plainview Rover High School.
Okay.
And many years after I left there, they consolidated with another school called Ola, and it's now called Two Rivers. They're still there. But Plainview was little. No football. It was just a little basketball.
Oh, just basketball, okay.
Little basketball school. And I coached boys and girls there.
Oh, wow.
And I was just going to be the boys' coach, and I was getting out of the Army that summer. I decided to get out, and the reason I was getting out was to take that job because I was debating whether to stay in. And my high school basketball coach, Jimmy Cunningham, at Wonderview, where I went, another little basketball school, Plainview was in our conference. He was from Plainview. And Jimmy Cunningham was now the superintendent of schools at Plainview. And he's the one that called me when I was in the Army and said, I know you've always wanted to coach. I'm going to have this job open at Plainview. You should come back here. And that's where all that started. But I coached at Plainview for 3 years and then Dardanelle High School for 5 years.
The Sand Lizards.
The Sand Lizards. Yeah. Best mascot in the state.
Exactly.
And I was the head basketball coach at Dardanelle, and I loved it. And just coached boys there. But at Plainview, I coached the boys and the girls. I also coached track at Plainview, and I started the baseball program at Plainview.
Wow.
And Two Rivers still has baseball to this day. In the program that we started in about 1996. So a lot of history in high school athletics for me, and I loved it. And then Mike Anderson, same one that I'd worked for when I was a student manager, did not get the head job at Arkansas when Coach Risham was fired in 2002, and he got the head job, luckily for him, at UAB, and he was from Birmingham.
Oh, yeah, from there.
So it was a big circle for him to get to come home. And he called me and said, I was about to work out my freshman. It was spring basketball. It was April. And, we didn't play again until the next November, but I was practicing guys year round. And we were I was getting ready to practice the freshmen one morning, and my assistant coach, Nathan Morris, now Dr. Nathan Morris, Dr. Morris says, Coach Z, Mike Anderson's on the phone. Back then, he didn't have cell. He used office phones.
Okay, yeah.
And I went, and Coach Anderson was on the phone. He said, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. And I knew he was from Birmingham. I said, are you home visiting your family? He said, no, I'm about to be named the head basketball coach at UAB today. And he said, I want you to come with me. And I had good teams at Dardanelle. I loved Dardanelle. And I was like, I don't know. And he said, no, you'll be a college coach. You get to recruit. You get to coach on the floor. You'll be a full at Division I. I was like, I don't know. And when he first told me he was in Birmingham, I said, so what are you doing in Alabama's in Tuscaloosa,
Yeah.
Auburn's in Auburn.
Oh, you forgot UAB.
I know your family's from, he's talking about UAB. I said, oh, and we played UAB. So I was like, oh, yeah. But I just never really, I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, but I made that decision right there that day. I went and talked to my athletic director, our superintendent, John Thompson. I had this great opportunity, and they let me leave. And I asked Coach, I said, I'm under contract here at Dardanelle. And he said, till when? And this was like April the 11th. And I said, I'm under contract till June, for this school year, till June, I think it was June 15th or June 30th. And I say it was June. I said, I'm under contract till June 30th. It's only April the 11th. And he said, no, you don't understand. We got to build this program. He said, I need you here yesterday or today. And I was like, so I can't wait till June 15th to move. He goes, no, you have to come now. So that was a Thursday. And on Sunday, I loaded up my car in Dardanelle, Arkansas, just filled it up with stuff, and drove to Birmingham, Alabama, and we played, and I became an assistant coach at UAB, and then we won a lot of games there. And our high point there was we beat #1 overall seed in the whole tournament, Kentucky. We just won Conference USA. This was a Conference USA with Louisville, Rick Pitino, Cincinnati, Bob Huggins, Memphis with John Calipari, DePaul, a lot of Houston. There was a lot of great programs.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy.
And we won that. We tied for that conference championship, and then we beat #1 seed Kentucky. We beat Washington and Kentucky to make the Sweet 16. And we actually didn't leave then. Coach stayed 2 more years there. He loved UAB, and we were very fortunate at UAB. And he interviewed with Tennessee Vols, Miami Hurricane. He was offered a job at Auburn one year, turned it down. They were on some he interviewed with some Georgetown. He didn't get offered all those jobs, but he talked to all those. So it was every spring it was like, are we going to be moving? And then finally it was Missouri, and that was the job that fit, that he loved. And then we were at Missouri and had a good run at Missouri, and then came back to Arkansas. 2011, been a long time, 13 full years now.
That's crazy. It was probably like a full circle moment whenever like going from like high school, UAB, Missouri, then whenever you got that call to go back to Arkansas, I'm sure you were just ecstatic.
It was crazy, and I would get messages from my friends that I coached against in high school or junior high, and they'd be like, my girls' team used to wear y'all out. As guys, you have confidence. Now you're a coach with the Razorbacks.
That's crazy.
It's just funny stories like that, and but it was a full circle. And it was a full circle for Coach Anderson, and T.J. Cleveland was on our staff. He'd played at Arkansas. So for a lot of us, it was a big part of our lives were here. And then we had to leave, and we had to go through UAB. We had to go through Missouri in order to come back to Arkansas. And I tell that to young people all the time that, you know, they want to be the next head coach of the Razorbacks or the next athletic director or the deputy athletic director. And I'm like, maybe you have to leave for a minute, because sometimes that's how you do it. You know, Mike Anderson didn't get the head job. He would have never been the head coach here if he hadn't left and gone somewhere else and proved that he could be a head coach. Same for me as an assistant. If I'd have just stayed in Dardanelle, I'd have been happy. I loved coaching basketball at Dardanelle High School. I'd be happy, but I wouldn't have got to experience all those things that I experienced by loading up a car, shedding some tears when you're saying goodbye to your family and friends and moving somewhere you had not been to before. But sometimes you got to do that in athletics.
Yeah,
or in any walk of life. In any walk of life.
Yeah, and I like too what you said about how, like, you said so many young coaches like say they want to be the head coach at Arkansas, head coach at whatever school they like is. But I think what you said is a testament to, like, in life, like, you don't just get to like press a button like on an elevator and you're just there. Sometimes you just got to keep taking steps, continue to show up and work hard, and like you never know the opportunity that can present itself.
That's 100% right. You just don't know. I think I think of the things I get to do now around the Razorbacks. You know, if I'd have stayed at Plainview or Dardanelle, I wouldn't be getting to do them. Now, I had to leave, and I had to go win some games and be a part of some successful programs to have somebody else want to bring you to their place. And it all was a circle. It was just a journey to get back here. But then at the same time, when we got here, and then we had 8 years here. You know, we had the third most wins in the SEC over 8 years, but we just couldn't get past the round of 32. We'd get to the round of 32 and get beat by Carolina or something. Then the next year we'd get beat in the first round. And then we'd go to the NIT, and then you get let go. So after 8 years, I never thought, I'd been coaching 25 years. I'd never been let go. But to get let go, our whole staff got let go, so it wasn't just me, but all of us. But it's at your alma mater. It's where this was your home. This was where you grew up. That's your dream, to be here. You know, I think I could have handled that easier if we'd gotten let go at Missouri or some other place we would have gone. If we'd have been at Georgetown or Miami or Texas Tech or TCU or something, but that it was home, you know. And for me, my parents getting older and still in St. Vincent, and the jobs I was offered when we got let go, like at University of North Carolina, Asheville, and so many great high school coach jobs in Arkansas, and outside of Arkansas, some great high school jobs I was open, but other jobs that I thought about, and some of them were mid-majors, some of them were low majors. Was offered, I think, 3 Division II head jobs. That's an honor to be asked to be anyone's coach. But at the same time, I kept, I've moved quite a bit, and I've done my moving. My family's down the road. I got family right here in Northwest Arkansas too, and I'm not sure I want to move anymore. So for me, it came like a period where, like, okay, I'm to the point where I want to stay. And so I had to make my own way. I had to figure out what I can do to stay, because we were told, you got to go.
Yeah.
And so instead of just me going off to UNC Asheville, now if I'd have done that, I'd have been fine. I'd have loved probably coaching at UNC Asheville or wherever. But at the time, I wasn't ready to move. I was like, I'm not done here. I can provide something here. I can give something back to Arkansas still. And I never was mad. I was disappointed to get let go, but I was never like mad at anybody. I knew, because I'd been here. I knew after 8 years, you need to go to a Final Four or a Sweet 16 or a Final 8 or win the conference. We'd finished second in the conference a couple times. We'd been a runner-up in the conference tournament a couple times, but we hadn't won it.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do at Arkansas. You're not going to stay at Arkansas forever if you're just okay. If you're third in the league and wins, but you're not making a deep run, you're not going to get to stay. And that's what happened to us. And I understood that.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And something I found impressive about you, and I realized this a few weeks ago, I was kind of sitting there thinking, I'm like, I don't know if there's anyone maybe that has just been around the Razorback basketball program, whether it's in a manager role, assistant role, or now in the broadcast role for as many years as you probably have been. Yeah. And something I've always picked up on you is like just listening to you, or anytime I'm ever talking about you or talking to you, is just how passionate you are. What would you say is kind of like your why of why you're so passionate about, what is the Razorbacks or just life in general?
Well, just growing up a little smaller than a lot of people, so I always had to be pretty inspired, and I had to, I had to work in school, and I had to focus in school to do well, and I just kind of early on in life said I'm a little bit of an underdog, and my parents were tremendous. I mean, my dad spent 22 years in the Army. He served his country. We weren't going hungry, but we weren't, rich by any means. We weren't close to that, and so I always felt like I had something to prove, and I always wanted to make my parents proud and my family proud. That was always to this day, very important. My parents are both still alive, and I just like making them proud. That's what I'm inspired to do. And I also wanted to prove when I came up here, Fayetteville was like, wow. It's like it is now, but even back then it was, I'm not a car guy, but it was BMWs and Mercedes and beautiful SUVs, and these were the students.
Yeah.
And I got an old beat up 4-door car that just barely getting around, and you just learn that, hey, there's some people that are kind of starting ahead of me. They're on, but I'm as good as they are, because I do believe in this. Nobody's better than anybody else. I just don't think they are. Now, you got an incredible journey, and there's things you can do way better than I can do, and there's things that he can do better than I can do, and this guy is a beautiful singer and a great musician. So there's levels of it, right? But deep down, the core of people, and there's some people that don't do things right in the world, but I don't ever think I'm better than anybody, and I don't like people when they think that they're better than somebody, because no one's better than anybody else. I might can do something better than you. You might be able to do something better, but I'm not better than you. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's very important in a place like Fayetteville with a big time campus and a lot of beautiful things, and there's people that come to school here and they don't have hardly any money. They just fight and figure out their way to be successful and to go have a successful life. There's some that come in that have a little bit and that can get by, and there's some that come in very wealthy, that come from we have a lot of wealthy families in Arkansas, and some of them come in very wealthy, and I'm not better than the wealthy, but they ain't better than me. And I think that's something that's always inspired me, and I think that's the way all people should be.
Yeah, no, I love that, and just realizing that, everyone, like you said, no one's better than anyone else,
right?
And kind of just whatever you do have, using that to the best of your abilities every day.
Yeah.
Because not only can it help you, but kind of what I've realized with you too is you never know who you'll come across.
No.
As you realize, coming across thousands of athletes now, so many people, and you're just in athletics with your role in athletics, and just me coming across people like you, just you never know who you can impact and how they could impact someone else too, which is, I think, something that's...
chain. It's like a chain.
Exactly. Which I think something so cool, not only about athletics, but just about life in general. And something that Arkansas's former coach, Coach Morris, always shares with me is every day you have a choice. You can either be a giver or a taker.
Yeah.
And that's right. Something I've definitely, every interaction I've had with you, just how you're always asking questions about how I'm doing, and anytime I listen to you, man, you're always seeing what you could do to help someone else, and that's something I always man, look up to you for.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I like, this was many years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, hey, I talked to so-and-so, and I didn't remember or really know the person he was talking about, but I'd met him somewhere along the way and had talked to him. And my friend, who I'd known for many years, he said what he liked about you and talking to you, I think we were in an airport talking or something, he said was that you were really good at making him feel good. And so I'd made this guy that I had not known feel pretty good just in our conversation. I wasn't sitting there pumping him up, or I don't know what I said to him, but he came away feeling like I feel good after talking to him. And that's the way people are with you, Will. And so I do think that's something that's what Coach Morris is talking about, and being a giver, and we're all takers at times.
Yeah, exactly.
I try to sometimes have to really remind myself, don't be so selfish. I'll do something, I'll be like, that was kind of selfish of me. Don't be so selfish. And I do think we need humble, and we need to be together. We need togetherness. And I came from a family where, everyone's opinion mattered, and no one was better than anyone else. That's kind of how I was raised, and I believe in that. And I don't think that someone should be better than someone else because of a political affiliation or their color of their skin or where they're from, or, oh, you're from the best part of Little Rock. Well, I'm from very rural Arkansas. It don't matter. That don't matter. I'm no better than you, and you're no better than me. And all together, it's a wonderful melting pot. Fayetteville's a very good melting pot for this state. Don't you think?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And for the surrounding area. And now it's great. When I came to school here, this university was mostly Arkansas people. And now with the growth of this school and kind of the new rules we have and it's a lot of young people from Oklahoma and Texas and Missouri, and it's a big melting pot of our region of the country, and especially still for our state, which is a pretty good thing.
Yeah, it's awesome to just see how so many people from so many different areas, backgrounds, races, whatever they come from, how just being a student at the University of Arkansas can bring people together, and just as we've talked about with athletics, with what you've been involved with basketball, and now even do stuff with the Razorback Foundation for other sports, seeing how sports can truly bring people together. I'll promise you this: when Arkansas is playing Oklahoma State week 2 of college football next year, and Arkansas scores a touchdown, and there's a Arkansas fan sitting next to Arkansas fan, it doesn't matter if they know each other or whatever it is. They'll be hugging, high-fiving, best friends. Yeah. And it's just awesome how it can truly bring people together.
Yeah, that's what it does. That's what it does. And it brings, in a neighborhood when a big shot's made to go to the Final Four or something, you hear people in the neighborhood yelling and screaming, and just people, representing the school and stuff that they wear and how they act. It's all a pretty neat deal. And we're fortunate in this state because this is all we have. Like in the state you grew up and you love the Razorbacks. There's a whole lot going on there.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, you got OU, you got Oklahoma State, you got TU, you got Oral Roberts, you got the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, you got a lot of things. And so here, I think we're pretty blessed that we don't have to compete like that. No offense to Arkansas State or Little Rock. And most of the people that I know that support Little Rock or UAPB or Little Rock, they're Razorback fans. They're a Razorback fan. And I was talking to a guy the other day, works at Arkansas State, lives in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and works there, been a lifelong Razorback. But he's a professor and he teaches he probably has to hide it a little bit up there sometime. I don't think he's wearing Razorback gear to class every day. But he grew up a Razorback and still is a Razorback. So I think that's what's great about the University of Arkansas.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's something I always told people in Oklahoma. They got tired of me saying this. I'm like, the difference in Arkansas, which is a big recruiting factor that you can't tell anyone about Oklahoma State, or really any state that has a major university, is when you go to the University of Arkansas, there's no competing university in the whole state. Everyone's a Razorback.
Yeah.
You go to any other state, you have Oklahoma State, Texas, you have a million schools, California, a million schools.
That's right.
But Arkansas is only one Razorback, and I think it's so cool because it can really unify people as you saw in IVLC.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that is a good thing. And then the flip side of that is that all the passion, like of another state that's maybe got 5 things going, they got 5 passions. In Arkansas, there's only one, so there's one tremendous passion, which can also bring some toughness on your student athletes or your coaches.
Exactly, because they're so passionate.
They're so passionate.
And so high demanding.
Yeah, there's so much put into whether or not your football team can win this game this Saturday, and it's a big deal when they win, and it's a very disappointing thing when they lose, and a lot of people like to go negative quick, like the Oklahoma State game that you just talked about. It's going to be awesome. We've not played there in years.
Yeah.
But it's April right now. You can already sense the pressure. Because the first game of the year is against Pine Bluff. We're going to beat Pine Bluff.
We don't really have to worry about nothing about that.
But there's already going to be, even now in April, there's pressure building because everyone's already saying, let's see what we do against Oklahoma State. That'll be a measuring stick and for the team. And so even though it's April, early April, and that game's not till September, it's already something that people are already starting to kind of hum about. What's going to happen when we go to Oklahoma State? So when we go to Oklahoma, I've seen it my whole life. We go to Oklahoma State and win, it's a beautiful thing. We will think we're going to win the national championship. Or this year with the 12-team playoff, we're going to know, at least we're going to think we know, that we're going to make the playoff because we just won in Stillwater. That's on one side. But if we go there and don't win, then it's what we see sometimes out of most fan bases, and ours is too. That it's the end of the world,
yeah, exactly.
and it's we're not going to win another game, and we're not any good, which is not true. We might lose that game and win the next 9. You just don't know. So that's what makes Razorback athletics awesome. And there's always something to look forward to. There's always another game coming.
Exactly. I think that's the beauty in at Razorback athletics and just like athletics and life in general is because like no matter if something's going good in your life, whether you've had a big win or you just came off a big loss, like everyone has a choice every day to just keep getting back up.
Yeah.
Keep showing up. And that's one of the biggest things I've just
well, I've heard you say that on your social media. You talk about that, and that is a choice, right?
Yeah. Yeah, something I always share with groups when I speak too is like that people always ask me, how do you get around a college campus that I use a stick to get around? And I say, I'm still able to get around, but just like anyone, there's blocks I face, whether, there's scooters everywhere.
Yeah.
You can run to a scooter, be lost. Or when it's icy, might fall down, not necessarily know where I'm at. Or I might miss a step and stumble. But what I always share with groups and teams is everyone in life faces a time where you run into something you didn't know was there. Or you fall down, feel like you can't get back up.
Yeah.
So it seems like everything in your life comes stumbling down. But the awesome thing is, I always tell groups, I, just like everyone I'm speaking to, have the choice every day to just keep getting back up.
Yeah.
And you never know, like, the opportunity that can present itself. Like, so many opportunities that have been able to have been presented to you. Just, man, being around the Razorback basketball program, being able to make a difference there, just the foundation, or now in broadcasting. And it's just been cool to see and just be able to hear from you on this podcast. And being called the Rise Above podcast, there's going to be a lot of people listening to this podcast today that, man, as they're listening to this podcast, there's something hard going on in their life. Or maybe later down the road, they're going to go through something hard. What's kind of an encouraging message you'd have for them to be able to rise above whatever the storm they're facing?
Yeah, like you said, there's dark days. There's some days that it's hard. There's days you don't feel as good as you did the other days. There's days that maybe you've had a few days in a row where you've kind of had to battle. And now you're getting up and you got a lot of stuff that you need to do that day. And maybe it's some tough stuff. Maybe it's some tough decisions, whether it's your personal life or work life or anything. And you can get discouraged. And you just can't. You have to somehow keep a positive mindset. I think, and it's not like when I think this way that I'm wishing any ill will on anybody. But you always know there's people got it a whole lot worse, right? And so that's why you're an inspiration, because there's people that do have their sight, and maybe they're not very motivated to do stuff. You're very motivated. And there's other people that might have their sight, but they can't get out of a wheelchair, or they have other major health issues, or maybe they can't hear, or maybe there's so many people that don't have it as good as most of us do. But for those of us that don't have those kind of issues, there's still people that have many days where they're down, and you've got to find a way to keep yourself motivated. And everyone's got a way to get better. No one has.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think anyone's had a perfect day yet. We all. Sometimes we say, "Oh, it was a perfect day," or we were at the beach with the family. And sometimes that's good to think that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to have those kind of days, but there's always room to get better. There's always ways to make somebody better, and it might be as simple as getting your phone and calling somebody you hadn't talked to in 2 years, or somebody you've lost touch with, or one of your cousins that you only see at Christmas. So you pick the phone up and call him in April and check on him and see how he's doing. Or, maybe checking on somebody who lost a loved one in the last few months, and you were there and you went to the funeral and you were a part of everything. But it's also important to check back on them 6 weeks later and 3 months later and 8 months later and see how they're doing, right? And I think that we all have stuff we can do a lot better and that we can get better at. That's what makes life great. Hopefully you stay motivated. And I do believe in like this isn't to put a cold thing on life, but it's like Lou Holtz always said when he was coaching here, nobody wants to hear about your problems. And 85% of the people, they don't care about your problems. And the other 15%, they're glad that you got them. And that's kind of cold to hear that.
Yeah, no, it is, yeah.
And so, and I don't think those are trumpers or anything. That's just something Lou Holtz made up. But it's the point of that quote that, you know, and it's people get inspired by you, what you've overcome, and your great attitude, and that's a platform you'll always have, and you have to continue to use. It's important to have you doing that, and for other people, that it's important for them to keep a positive, because people have issues in their relationships or work relationships or money. A lot of things can bring a negative into someone's life, and it's easy to give up. And just know there's always somebody who cares about you, right? And there's always people that want to see you do well, and there's people that are pulling for you all the time. No matter what Lou Holtz says, there are people pulling for you. There are people that want you to win. They want you to be successful, and those are the people that you got to have in your life.
Exactly, that's awesome. And when you said never give up, it reminds me of my all-time favorite speech, which I know you know this speech, Jimmy Valvano's SB speech, where he says, "Don't give up, don't ever give up." And as we know, like he died shortly after that, but through him just not giving up and maintaining that positive attitude and just that never give up mantra, man, the lives he impacted now and
still does.
It still does. That's awesome. Isn't the Valvano Foundation or
it's made millions of dollars for cancer research, and that he started that night at that speech. Yeah. That's when ESPN and him announced they were starting the Jimmy V Foundation. How about that?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that just goes back to kind of where we started with this podcast, like full circle of like, man, you never know what can happen when you just show up and, man, always find a way to see how can you make someone else's life better?
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
When you live that way, then that makes you feel a lot better.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
You know, the best way to cheer yourself up is to cheer somebody else up.
Exactly.
And I was told that as a little boy, and it's true. When you're feeling down and today's not a great day and you're not as motivated, go cheer somebody else up. That'll make you feel better.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's so true because like I truly believe in life, you're either a fountain or you're a drain. You're either like pouring into someone or you're just taking everything out of yourself and saying, oh, poor me, and then just ruining the attitudes of the people around you by being negative. Or you're saying, you know what, sure, my situation might not be the best, but I'm going to make someone else's life better.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome what you said there. And I can't thank you enough for being on with us today and just for being a great friend to me the past couple years since we know each other.
Well, I'll be there for you if you ever need anything. You know that, and proud of you. And I know I always like talking to your folks and your dad. They're just so proud of you, Will, and what you've been able to achieve. And it's an inspirational story, and you keep it going.
I appreciate it, Coach, and we always appreciate me. My dad always loved talking about you too, and just hearing anytime we're able to listen to you call games or just on the Razorback Daily, or it's always great to hear you because we know no matter what, like you're always gonna be passionate about whatever you're talking about.
Try to be, and it's a good way to be in life.
Yeah, that's awesome, and man, can't thank everyone for tuning in to the podcast today, and know that you can catch the podcast on any platform you listen to podcasts on, or you can go check us out on Instagram, and know that no matter the storm you face today or for the rest of your life, man, when you continue to show up and put others above yourself, you can always rise above the storms of life. We'll catch you guys next week.